Hi, everyone. Today we're joined by Émeline Brulé, who is a lecturer at the University of Sussex. Hi.
Hi, that's me. I'm Émeline Brulé. Uh, so I'm a graphic designer by training, a UX designer by trade, and I've got the PhD in human-computer interaction, which led me to become a lecturer in industrial design. So just have kind of like many hats. And Alex today invited me to present 3 objects that represent 3 things I'm currently interested in. Should I start?
Yeah, and just so that we get a sense of where you are in the world and when you're spending most of your time, you are not on the same time zone as me.
Yes, hence the light is different. I'm currently in San Francisco, very much center of San Francisco, where I'm lucky to have been able to join that call because we've just been having outages of the electrical grid and internet from our internet providers. You would never guess that from being in Silicon Valley and all, but that happens way too often here.
Well, we'll hopefully get a stable connection for your 3 objects. So let's go ahead with the first one.
Okay, so first one, I'm going to show it from here, is a Braille document. You can see the relief here with a shade. So this is a document sent by the American National Braille Foundation after I purchased one of their Braille reader for a friend. I'm showing this because I really like how Braille feels and looks, but I don't actually read it tactily, and I only read it in French, so I can't actually read that document, which is a shame. But that was a great way to represent my interest in accessible design and information representation management. So much more about like my earlier work. So I work a lot now on educational technologies and particularly non-visual teaching and learning and museum accessibility. And I also keep tabs on the many attempts by designers to redesign Braille or propose alternative tactile characters that would be easier for sighted people to read. Do not do that at home, please. If you have to find out how information should be conveyed tactily, please ask blind experts first. And I'm actually even going to recommend to talk to blind librarian Chancy Fleet. But yeah, and yeah, that's.
Can I ask a question about this? Is this when you're talking to people about Braille and what it sort of implies for you, is it an object that you end up referring back to and you end up using in your life? Does it kind of come up and do you sort of go, and I have a book? Or is it something that you keep as a kind of talismanic reminder of this thing that you know about and you're capable of?
So I think I keep it because the first time I've seen Braille and touched Braille in real life was because I was doing a PhD with blind children. And it just seems like for something that's an alternative means of reading and communication for so many people, we should be seeing Braille more often. We should be more aware of it. We should be at least able to kind of have an idea of what the document is about. And obviously there's the language barrier. Like most people think that Braille is universal or that sign language is universal, and they're not. But I just keep it because I think it's it's a way to show it to other people, to make it part of other people's lives and not just something that's on the remnant of accessibility experts. And there's been lots of pushback against Braille literacy. Like lots of people think it costs costs too much. It might not be as adapted for older people, but it's definitely adapted for blind children. And there's been lots of initiatives to only use audio-based technologies. The problem being that we have no idea how that affects literacy, or rather we have an idea that we haven't been measuring it. So we can't say that the literacy of people who have been only educated with audio is going to be better. And there's also this thing, like, because Braille seems so foreign and not accessible to us sighted people, not that we're the ones who should matter in any way on that topic, we kind of impose our way of thinking about reading. Like, if you have any kind of visual abilities, then we're just going to give you like a large print, even though you might be better reading Braille. Maybe it will be more comfortable, maybe it will be faster, maybe it will just be easier. And yeah, I think it's kind of keep it as a reminder that I can't just go back to a state where I didn't know all of these things about disability. And
it makes me think, maybe connecting to your next object, it makes me also think of the fact that we came from oral cultures. So we didn't write, we talked to each other, and were capable of recording and remembering so many more stories and so many more concepts than we were once we could rely on just offloading it onto a page. And I think your next object is also about ancestral capabilities. So what do you?
Oh yeah. Okay, so my next object is a small ceramic plate that was made by a Los Angeles artist. The name is escaping me right now, but I can't find it. I have an ever-expanding ceramics collection from about everywhere I've been. I actually even have a cup from Bristol, from a project called like in Stockscroft, where the last printing ceramics factory closed back in 2002, I think, and they bought some of the material to do the China printing, and they turned it into kind of like a people initiatives towards like preserving these traditions, and also like just providing jobs and incomes to those who couldn't live from that industry anymore. So yes, it's mostly very small pieces. I do have a lot of small plates everywhere in the house. And that I started when I was working on gender studies and design at the very beginning of my PhD, and trying to foster a community around these topics. So that was like 2014, 2015. There's been a lot more emphasis on social justice and marginalized communities since, but that was a very small community back then. And a lot of the discussions we had then were about how parts of design history had been completely erased or just ignored because they were just like women industry. Well, you've talked about this in one of the earlier video about the Bauhaus and how women were forbidden to attend some of the workshops that weren't considered to be for them. But yeah, so this is part of my both my research interest around like design and tech ethics and technology for marginalized groups, which also involves like me spending way too much time on Wikipedia, just like adding or editing or translating biographies of women from like design and special education history.
I'm probably going to ask you at some point to add Rita Lawrence to this list, who is the co-founder of a pottery collective her and her husband started in the 50s, which I've just discovered. So that'll be for a different episode on women potters, because I unfortunately know way too many famous male ceramicists and not enough women ceramicists. So that'll be a topic for a next conversation between us, I'm sure. And finally, you bring us something very elaborate that is your third object.
Yes, so my third object is a jean jacket, which might not seem particularly elaborate, but if I zoom in, might start seeing just the extent of the repairs that have been conducted. Yes, this is a Star Wars printed patch that has been conducted on that jean, and actually all over that jean jacket. So I'd like to say that this jean jacket has had at least 7 lives. I actually bought it second-hand. Well, you know, there may have been a lot more many hands before that. In a jean shop in Paris, like in the south of Paris, there's one shop that just specializes in second-hand jean items. So everything from Levi.
I mean, you can tell us, we have to know the name of the store now. You can't just go, here's the store and, you know, Google it.
It's very near Port d'Italie. So the Italian door, I don't really know how that translates. It's literally on the other side of the periphery. So it's really easy to find if it's not. It hasn't closed because this was 6 years ago. And he's actually a master of jean repairs. So these are kind of like the initial jean repairs. And then I've just been wearing this so much that everything had to be repaired.
Did you learn anything about repairs in the process?
Yes, I did. So one of the first things one of the very first repair I did was just that elbow, and I just cut through the fabric and I did a patch. It's actually at least the second patch I have on that elbow. Also a Star Wars print. And this kind of like, it's really been, it's not even repairs anymore. It's just like a constant maintenance and constant mending of every new hole or fabric tear that kind of appears. And so the first thing that I did, I made a mistake of just cutting through the fabric instead of reinforcing it. Second mistake that I did was to use reinforcement fabric that was much more heavier than the initial jean fabric. So that just created tensions on the fabric that repercuted elsewhere. Never had any kind of proper sewing education, so it was kind of discovery. And like now what I'm doing is mostly inspired by sashiko mending, so, and visible mending. So I just have an additional piece of fabric as support that is about the size of a piece of each piece of the original jacket, and that is just embroidered with different patterns so as to just like keep the fabric together for a bit more time.
And how do people react to this particular jacket?
Yeah, so like that's an interesting story. So there's lots of designers who just ask me where I got it, or like where I found that, and I'm just like, I've just spent lots of hours, lots and lots of hours on this. And there's also always like people who are just like, you know, we're paying you enough that you can get a new jean jacket, or like, well, we kind of seem concerned about why I would wear like repaired clothes or clothes that that just had a long life, and that are visibly old. I think this kind of,
Do you think
just not
is it a design taboo to not constantly be after a brand new experience, because we're always designing brand new things, we're always designing and inventing brand new things? Do you think there's something of a taboo in embracing something like you have?
I don't know if it's a design taboo or something that also linked to how women fashion has been designed. Like women fashion, it's often like very flexible. Well, nowadays, just didn't used to be the case. Very flexible fabric. Those are very stretchy fabric. Those are really difficult to repair. And we're kind of always asked to look well kept and to put attention in our clothes. And like someone who's like, well, actually, I'm going to prefer something that lasts and that might not be perfectly tailored and that has been repaired. It's just not something that we're used to see from women.
For me, growing up in the 80s, your jean jacket is for me a very kind of early 90s look. You know, it's a punk look. It's there's something about it that's very much of that particular era. And so I would see how someone who hasn't grown up with that image of, you know, anti-establishment aesthetics, because it is an aesthetic, it's a choice of, you know, no logos, and you would, you know, tear off the kind of the maker, and you wouldn't be proud of wearing a Tommy Hilfiger or Calvin Klein at the time. It was, you know, the point was not to show it. So I think it's an interesting thing that you're bringing people to be confronted with again, because bar, I think, Vivienne Westwood, there's not a lot of high fashion that does this kind of grunge aesthetic still.
There's still lots of, you know, everyday fashion that there's lots of people who buy new distressed jeans. Like this is still definitely happening, and I also see that on the jean jackets. I think like the difference, I actually try to repair it, and this kind of a difference where we weaken the fabric like voluntarily, and they're not, and it might be tone or show like a form of wear, but never to the extent. I think like a good thing as well with that, just that you can not show on the video, but the fabric has been worn so much that you can see the light through it. Like it's just not blocking the light anymore. And it's purely, it's purely wear. And I think the issue at hand is really this idea that it's kind of like, even within that aesthetics, I guess it's kind of an extreme to have conserved the garment for so long and care for a garment for so long, even though like it's kind of lifespan has expired.
Well, obviously it hasn't. And I thank you very, very much for joining us today and talking through your 3 objects, Émeline. See you soon.
See you.